Thank you, Hannah. Thank you for being here again. I was actually here a couple of years ago, so it's very good to be back and to talk about a different subject. I'm going to touch on the evolution, what we believe is the evolution from an omnichannel world into what might be a monochannel future. And of course, there's been a lot of conversation and topic around omnichannel today. Very brief snapshot for those of us that don't know Async. We are a global design and innovation business. As you pointed out, we're often described as Apple's best-kept secret. So we worked with them for 20 years, with Steve Jobs creating some of those transformational retail experiences. But we've been doing that for 30 years now, and we've been working across a multitude of different sectors, different categories, whether that's in hospitality, banking, retail, luxury, automotive. We work in a world where we create brand experiences that aim to transform the future, that aim to shift the paradigm and create new types of innovation experiences that add value to businesses, brands, and ultimately to customers. And we do that at a kind of intersection of where physical, digital, and human meet together. But what we are here to talk about is monochannel. Why monochannel? What is monochannel? And how we might do it. And it really comes, we've been thinking about this for the last 2 to 3 years at Async, and we developed this strategy and coined the phrase of monochannel, really born out of the conversations that have been happening around physical v digital, around this kind of so-called polarization of online and offline, of the questions of, is e-commerce killing my retail strategy? And the idea that everyone's saying retail is dead, which we know is not. Only bad retail is dead. Only retail that doesn't adapt, that isn't innovative, that isn't disruptive, retail that doesn't understand customer behavior, doesn't understand customer preferences and where the future markets are going. That's the kind of retail that's going to die. And so this formed some of our perspective on monochannel. But to understand that, a quick recap on why Omnichannel was born for the last 20 years or so. And really, it was born very simply out of the transition from a bricks and mortar retail channel strategy to the additional channel of e-commerce in its most simple term. And in a way, you could argue that perhaps it was compromised from the beginning, as much as Omnichannel has done fantastic things, because e-commerce has always been an additional channel to a set of existing strategies, and therefore, the customer journey has not been conceived holistically from the very beginning. Now, we're certainly not here to knock Omnichannel. We've been creating Omnichannel experiences for a long while, but what we're trying to think about is how do we build on it? How do we build on a world that started in multi-channel? So I've got all my different channels, not talking to each other, but trying to send my goods to market, to trying to connect those different channels a bit more consistently. We hear that word, that's what Omnichannel is about, consistent experience, a consistent strategy, a consistent design, which is all very, very well and good. But is consistency really our benchmark? Isn't consistency actually hygiene factor now? The expectations that our actual current audiences have. So the final thing to say on this as well is it not still a very internal focused, a very business-focused approach? My different channels which are taking my goods to market. Whereas actually we think we need to keep pushing and challenging this to give a more consumer-centric approach. And to wind back and understand it a little bit more, what's incredibly interesting about Omnichannel rather, is that it was created by millennials and elder generations who lived in a pre-iPhone world. We understand what a fixed landline is and a laptop and those first e-commerce platforms. Whereas actually, the audience that we are talking to now, the audience that's got 4 times the spending power of millennials are Gen Z. And when did they grow up? They grew up with a digital phone in their hand. They grew up in a post-iPhone world. They don't understand omnichannel. They don't understand channels. All they understand is that technology is ubiquitous and that it's always there, and that's frankly not differentiating. Consistency isn't differentiating for them. It's table stakes. It's hygiene factor stuff. So with this in mind, we thought a lot about this audience and how off the back of it we can start to create monochannel experiences. So I'm going to share one project in which we used really as an experiment for bringing to life a monochannel experience. And the company we worked with is called Xiaomi, which I'm sure many people probably know in the room. Huge Chinese electronics manufacturer, 50 million customers, 150 million smart devices connected to their platform, premium brand, fantastic digital technology, electronic products, but they didn't have a physical space. So they came to us and said, how can we move from our e-commerce world into a retail presence that builds a more meaningful relationship with our customers? That was the first kind of challenge here. And they wanted to be revolutionary. They wanted to be innovative because a lot of their products are. And at great innovation, ideas sit at the heart of great innovation. But an idea alone is not innovative. Innovation is when it gets adopted. When that idea gets adopted by a large market, that's where true innovation sits. So for Xiaomi, it was about understanding the market that we're in. So mobile first, of course, has been a huge buzzword of the last year. But this flagship store in China is in a truly mobile-first commerce nation. China really is the only true mobile-first commerce nation. The rest of us are all playing catch-up. We're all kind of getting there with it. But understanding that context, understanding, therefore, the audience who use technology consistently through their mobile, 99% of all transactions in China are paid through mobile. So this enabled us to take the approach of monochannel, which at the very heart is about using the mobile device whilst in the physical space. So our engagement model was built around the mobile-first type of interactions. Now, the challenge for the first flagship store was, if I've got 600 square meters space, I've got 200 square meters of display area, we do the math, the traditional retail model, and I've got 200 SKUs. It's quite simple. That's your projection. That's your projected revenue. However, they've got 2,000 products. So what do we do? How do we find a solution around that? How do we find a monochannel approach that can kind of find the balance between 200 square meters and 2,000 products without compromising it? So that was the challenge. And I'm going to explain monochannel through 5 different facets that, in particular to this project, really built it out. The first thing about monochannel is the idea of being physically and digitally present at the same time. So within this store, having physical products and digital products, allowing a growth from 200 to 2,000 SKUs. So if we wanted to put 2,000 products in this space, it would look like Walmart, okay? With respect to Walmart, we don't want to pile stuff from floor to the ceiling high. We need a certain display area. We need to maintain the quality and the premium nature of the brand. But the idea was that whether you see the display as a physical display or the introduction, this is where we introduce what we call a digital portal. This is our augmented view of 2,000 products. So within the space, we have 200 physical products and 2,000 digital products, enabling us to be much more flexible around the arrangement. And the type of interaction as a consumer is all on my mobile phone. So I go in here, my QR code, whether I access the physical products or the digital products, is going to be my monochannel experience, and we'll dig into that a little bit more. But the first part, the first shift from an omnichannel to a monochannel world is a shift that is from a fixed footprint to a more flexible series of product displays. The only way physically to increase product displays is more space. More space means more retail footprint, which means more overheads. It's more shops or it's bigger shops, which is a prohibited cost for the business. So a flexible business model, a flexible display system, digitally and physically, is the first part of monochannel. Now we're going to dig into the digital portal wall a bit more to really understand how clever it is. First of all, we're exponentially scaling the Xiaomi product offer. We've gone from 200 SKUs to 2,000 SKUs, 10 times the amount of products display in the same area. And if you start thinking about this as a retail ecosystem, how that might roll out. how it works is I arrive here with my mobile phone, QR code activated. I can access all of the products. I can understand the different variations, the colors, the different options. I can do comparisons. I can see the price. I can basically get all the information I want around the product, either digitally or physically, but critically through using my mobile phone in display. This is the whole idea. This is the whole point of using mobile within the physical space. So we're shifting from the idea of different channels of I'm offline, I'm online, I'm back offline again, to the idea of being physical and digital at the same time, the blurring of the boundaries of the physical-digital relationship. It's more fluid, and it's more dynamic, and it's about building an ecosystem around user behavior, really understanding how our audience are using technology. Now, the really clever bit is what we call receptors and intelligence. Is anybody familiar with Scott Galloway's new algorithm of value? I recommend looking at it on L2. And in short, what he talks about is the smartest companies in the world, the Googles, the Amazons, the Facebooks, they have a multitude of different receptors that are receiving information. As they receive that information, they get better, they get smarter. So every time I use Google, Google gets smarter. Every time Google gets smarter, I've got a more tailored experience, and they're learning more off of me. This is the idea of receptors and intelligence. So our digital portal here does exactly that. Every time a user makes a decision around an interaction, makes a different kind of user behavior, it feeds into our receptors and intelligence model. So if I go there with my mobile phone, I look at a product, and it can understand how deep I've gone. At what point did I drop off of the user flow? Was it at the price? Was it a color? Was it a comparison? So very quickly, we're able to actually, from the data, from the intelligence that's feeding into my live monochannel interaction, that can then inform future sales strategy. The business can really quickly see what products people like or where they might potentially drop off. And you can see the type of user interaction that we have. This also works not just in the digital portal, but of course on the physical product displays that we have there as well. So the shift is from interactions to intelligence. We've been talking about touchpoint interactions forever. Let's have interactive touchpoints, and that's all brilliant and good and wonderful. We can have lovely digital interactions. That's fantastic, but is it intelligent enough? What's it truly delivering for the business? Digital interactions are a big investment. The software development, the hardware, the content curation, all of that kind of good stuff. So this is about moving from interactions to intelligent systems to retail that's being truly innovative to feed into the system. What that does is inform the sales strategy, informs the inventory management, and actually informs product development. And I'll get into that a little bit further into the presentation. So moving on to the fourth. There's a worry that with all of this digital, we actually lose this sense of dialogue. We lose the human factor. And actually what this approach does is frees up people to be the human voice of the brand. And in a world where digital is everywhere, what we need more than ever as social animals, as humans that we are, we need human interaction. We want empathy, we want engagement. And so through this system, we've actually been able to negate most of the cash wraps within the space, for example. The staff are untethered, and therefore, we've redefined the roles around staff to provide a role, to provide an experience of education, of expertise, of product knowledge, of empathy, of building deeper and more meaningful relationships while the digital stuff does what it needs to. So we shift from a brand that's about broadcast to one that's about dialogue. And frankly, too many brands are in the world of broadcast, pushing out but not receiving back. And the brands that get in a kind of more fluid dialogue that enable a kind of live feed, whether that's through human to human or digital to human, are those that actually work towards what we call the idea of membership here. And I think in the Tommy Hilfiger presentation this morning, we heard a bit about kind of exclusive access. And really, these 4 points add up to the final and the fifth point of Monochannel, which leads us to the idea of membership, actually, and how we can actually move from a world of one-way dialogue, of loyalty, into a world of membership. So this is about, through all of that monochannel interaction, users are participating, they're contributing, they're part of the conversation, and this is adding value to both. So we think about monochannel as a platform for value exchange that creates value for both of those different parties. And it's a shift from loyalty to membership. Because if loyalty was about discounts and vouchers and free shipping, this is frankly the old world, and the future world needs to be about building memberships through creating true meaningful value with customers. And I'm just conscious of time, which I can see ticking away there, and I'm getting a look. So to summarize, we think monochannel is an interesting point of conversation to evolve the idea of omnichannel. How do we push that thinking forward so that we're thinking about the physical, digital, and human relationship as a simultaneous entity? And the key word here is about it being simultaneous. So that we move from a world that is perhaps fixed, that's about channels, that's about interactions, broadcast, and loyalty, to our monochannel world, which is one that truly builds experiences around the customers, that allows for a flexible digital and physical products display simultaneously, that through that builds an ecosystem based around the user behavior and the user needs, to build out really smart, intelligent interactions that feed data and information insights back into the business, which creates a fantastic form of live feed and dialogue with the customer towards membership and long-term loyalty and brand advocacy. These are our thoughts, and we like to provoke a few thoughts here as we are today, so happy to take a couple of questions. Thank you.